the back.
Nice. Today we are starting our utility building build. In 2021, we bought 40 acres of land in Vermont and embarked on a new adventure. Our dream is to self-build a sustainable, net-zero passive house with the latest smart home technology. We felled 400 trees to clear an area for a house site and septic leach field. We now have a solid 1,000-foot driveway and most of the site work is done. We have a running well, operational septic, and power. Now we can comfortably live in our RV on our land while we build. We value freedom and flexibility, so we decided to do our build in phases. Instead of building one large house, we're splitting it up into a utility building, house, garage, and workshop. The utility building is going to be 12 by 32 feet or just under 400 square feet with a lean-to carport of the same size on one side. It's going to be a simple rectangular shape with a gable roof. It will have 3 rooms, 2 exterior doors, and no windows. In the electric room, we will terminate the main electric and fiber lines, house batteries and solar equipment. The water room will house a water tank, pressure tank, water filters, and other water distribution equipment. The function of the third room will evolve over time, but it will start as a storage room and will house a washer, dryer, and a freezer while we build the house. The utility building will be built using many of the same techniques as we will use for the house, so it's a chance for us to learn as we go on a smaller project. We have never done this before. We are not professionals, so this is not a how-to. It's just our journey of how we're doing things.
Today we are pouring concrete, which is super exciting. This is the footing for the first of our concrete piers that we're going to be pouring. This is our first footing. We're going to go into way more detail on the other piers as we do those. But in summary, what we've got here is some piece of rebar that we have drilled and epoxied into the bedrock. We are on absolutely solid bedrock here. That's going to be the footing, and then up above we're going to have the sonotube. That's what these pieces of rebar are going to go up into to create our pier.
We have lined up all the tools, so I think we are ready for a concrete pour.
Promise to so freaking high up now.
We don't need to get everything out, right?
Exactly. So we've got 2 shovels. We'll use one for the hole and one for the mixer.
Okay.
Empty?
Yep.
one job. Then we're going to trowel it.
Yeah.
It's been 24 hours since we poured this footing yesterday, our first time pouring a concrete footing like this. The cement mixer did a great job. We were doing 2 bags at a time and that was kind of manageable. We could get the cart round here to get concrete in. It's really surprising to us how kind of dry that mix is. We mixed it according to the bag and it's, I guess we expected it to be a lot more liquidy than it really was. But once you get it filled up and you start screeding the top, you actually get a really nice smooth finish. This footing is going to have a pier on top. So the next thing we're going to do is put the Sonotube, the concrete cardboard form, up on here. We have had this concrete curing now for about 24 hours under this plastic. We've kept it wet, which is what you're supposed to do. We followed all the instructions there. So before we can put the Sonotube on, which is the concrete cardboard form, we need to remove the form that's there at the moment, the wooden form. So we backfilled that with sand. We pinned it down with a couple of pieces of rebar just pressed down on the edge of it with this rock. That seems to have worked really well. So the first thing we're going to do, dig out some of this sand, take off the wooden forms, then we can start looking at the Sonotube. That's great.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we got the wooden forms out and now it's time to set the Sonotube.
The Sonotube is now cut to length. We did that in 2 passes. We did a first pass to get it just below the string lines. The string lines indicate the height of the J-bolt, not the height of the Sonotube. J-bolt will stick out by 1 inch. We did measure that using our bracket to make sure it's going to be enough thread on there, and 1 inch works just nicely. We then did a second pass once it was under there using the laser to get that absolutely spot on. So the next thing we're going to do is get this exactly positioned under that string line intersection. To do that, I made this jig this morning. So this is just a couple of sheets of plywood that I cut into circles. It was a good excuse to make a circle cutting jig for the router, which I've been meaning to do for a while. And this bottom circle will fit inside the radius of the Sonotube. Now, one of the things you may not know about Sonotubes, if you haven't used them before, is the dimensions are nominal. So this is a 10-inch Sonotube. That's actually 10 inches plus or minus half an inch. And the reason they do that is so that when they transport them, they can actually nest them inside each other. So you really do get that variance. If you want to go in and get them all the same size, you can do. You can find all the ones that match. I wanted to make a jig that could accommodate different sizes of 10-inch nominal sonotubes. So the bottom circle is deliberately undersized, and so it'll actually like slide around a bit in the top of this sonotube, which is quite a large 10-inch sonotube. But what I did is I put little screws that we can open up in 4 positions around there, and so that way we can tune it precisely to this sonotube, get it really sort of nicely seated inside. When it's then inside, it'll do a couple of things for us. One, it's got some lines on that will allow us to very, very precisely locate the sonotube on that screw, which is extended to the height. So the total thickness here and there is 1 inch. Second thing it does, I put these 4 blocks on. This means we can set a level across these different dimensions and see how we're doing for level. That way we can get the sonotube plumb, more importantly get the top level, and that sits above the string lines, so it doesn't interfere with those string lines. So that way we should be able to get all the adjustments needed to get this exactly where we want it. So the next step now is to get it in position and work out, is it level or not? If it's not, we will just see what we can do to maybe shim the bottom a little bit. We've used a piece of foam board, 2-inch foam board, just a scrap that we had left over. I cut a circle out of it, and that's basically going to be a little bit of a brace for the bottom of the sonotube. The idea being that as we backfill, crush rock around this, it'd be really easy to knock the sonotube and knock it off plumb, knock it off the center point here. So hopefully that little bit of foam board there will actually just act as a bit of a sort of a gusset at the bottom, a little 2-inch sort of section that we can backfill on top of to hopefully hold this in place. The original plan was actually to construction adhesive that to the concrete, but given the concrete is wet and we want it to stay wet, we figured that construction adhesive wouldn't stick. Plus we forgot to buy it, and today is Labor Day and all the stores are closed, so we're going to try and make do without. There we go. So that's now a nice snug fit in there. So now we can rotate that sonotube to where it's nice and stable, and then align it perfectly.
We forgot the step in the process, which is to wrap the sonotube in poly. So now we just did that, and now we are backfilling it again. The sonotube is now level and plumb, and we have backfilled it quite high. Actually, later some of this material will need to take it down to be able to put the gravel, and also the sonotube is about 7 inches above the final grade. Now we'll need to cut 2 extra rebar pieces that will go inside, and then we'll be ready for concrete pour.
Take off my jig as well. Yeah?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Okay.
I can move this one. Can you move the orange one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty fun to me. Just to sit flush. Give me the small trowel.
Oh, I think it's too deep.
Our first pier is poured and it is exactly where we wanted it to be. These string lines cross perfectly in the top of that J-bolt. We also wrapped some painter's tape around the top of the J-bolt so we could see exactly how deep to put the J-bolt in. Again, we did measure that on the actual bracket to make sure we got that right, and that's come out really nicely. It's been about half an hour now since we poured the concrete in there. We've just been over it with the trowel just to smooth the top. You can see it has just settled a tiny bit in the Sonotube. There's maybe, I don't know, 1/16, maybe 1/8 of an inch at the top that it's just settled a little bit. But we're really happy with this. The pour went well. It was just under 3 bags of concrete in here to do a 33-inch tall Sonotube, which is exactly where they said it should be, according to the instructions. We got the rebar in. Apart from the little mistake where we forgot to wrap it in the poly and we had to dig it back out again, the rest of the pour went really well, and we're really happy with that. A couple of tips, maybe, if this is your first time doing a Sonotube pouring concrete like we are here. First tip I would say, follow the instructions. The manufacturers of the Sonotube, the manufacturers of the concrete, they tell you exactly what you need to know in terms of how much water to add, how long to mix for, what temperature, how long to wait, all these different things. It's all there. The Sonotube manufacturers as well tell you exactly how much concrete you'll need. And like I said, just bearing in mind that the diameters of these are going to vary a little bit. Also, do some prep work. Like we did here, making that jig made our life so much easier as we got to this stage. Putting that painter's tape on the J-bolt made it so much easier so that we could get the bolt exactly where it needed to go. So doing those sorts of things ahead of time, I think also really helped us as well.
I would add another tip that helped us is before you start the project, write down step by step what are the steps that you're going to do and what are the tools that you're going to need. We wrote down the list, but today at one point we forgot to check it when we forgot to put the poly line on. If we followed it exactly, we would have remembered, but we'll keep doing it better next time.
So now that we've got that J-bolt in, that is quite literally set in stone. We are going to be using that as ground zero for all other, like the reference point for all other measurements that we pull. We're just going to go back and just make sure our string lines are perfectly perpendicular, exactly where they need to be. We are using the laser for height. They're not the height measurements, but they're pretty close. They're pulled pretty tight, so they are pretty close to the height they need to be. Then we can also measure along to get the positions for the next Sonotube that we need to do. 4 more of those to go in. No issues keeping this concrete wet.
No. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.